everybody. Hey, you guys can make your way back to your seats. You're doing a great job. Way to start off the year talking to each other like you like each other. And so my wife, I'm married. If you saw a woman over here hugging me, it was my wife. And she decided in the month of December that she was gonna take a break from social media and like everything fun. And so she was gonna like read books and work out and stuff like that. So I felt like it was my duty as a good husband, I was going to ingest more social media and more Netflix, and then I was going to give her like some sort of secondhand IV drip of entertainment. And so I got really good at actually, I don't think you could be really good at this, is like telling people memes without like having some sort of picture. And so there's this one, they're never funny, because it's like barely funny when you see it yourself, but then like when you're telling somebody about it, it seems even less funny. But, well, you guys quieted down really fast. I was just gonna do this until you guys sat, but, okay. So there was this meme about, and now you guys are, I'm gonna tell a third hand now, it's not as even less funny, but there was this meme about like, by the time your kid is like 4 years old, because I have kids, they define themselves by one of four things. It's dinosaurs, fire trucks, trains, or Paw Patrol, and then that becomes like their whole world. I heard some yeses, there are some amens out there, I heard that. Those are people with children or nephews. Thomas is a train, all right? I said trains, I didn't forget that one. And so, this is where I was gonna start, all right? You guys are so quiet, such good listeners. And so, I watched this movie on Netflix I ended up telling her about later. It's called Mitchell's vs. the Machines. I don't know if you guys watch animated movies, but I do, because I enjoy them. There we go, Devin, let's go. All right, and so you're introduced, it's all, the whole movie is about this weird family, which I love. And they're weird, and they're gonna save the world from robots. And it's as weird as it sounds, it's super funny. And the way you're introduced to the brother character, who's this like little boy, is he's wearing a dinosaur shirt, he's sitting on his bed, he's got this big phone book open in front of him, he's got an old telephone and a marker. And he's like, doot, 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 doot. Hey, do you want to talk to me about dinosaurs? And you hear like, no. And then he's like, okay, bye. And he hangs up and then he crosses out that name on the phone book and then he goes to the next name. Have you guys seen this movie? It's hilarious. That kid's whole entire world, like everything he says in the movie and like everything you see about him in the movie is about dinosaurs. It was so real, it was hilarious. I love that because when something is your everything, it's the most important thing about your life. It's the most important thing to you. It's more important than anything else in your life. That kid, it was dinosaurs. I've seen that play out in my kids' lives as well. It's like fluctuated over time. But there's another show on Netflix, which I promise this isn't a commercial, I just haven't done very much because, my wife's not watching this, so I'm trying to make it up, talk to her about it, have something to do. So, well, it's January now, so now we're watching stuff together again. Yay for marriage. So, what I've been watching is this show called Last Chance U. Anybody ever watched Last Chance U? Yes, okay. So, there's a football one, it's okay, I'm not a big fan of it, but the basketball one is so good. Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps. And it's about JUCO basketball, so junior college basketball. Specifically, this school in East Los Angeles called East Los Angeles College, right? That's all it is? ELAC for short. And so the people who are playing on this junior college basketball team, imagine it's like community college basketball teams. But they're either there because they were formerly like D1 talent and they just didn't make it in school because they're bad at school, or like they had some off the court issues and so they've got demoted to junior college, or maybe they're just junior college talent, or maybe something happened to them and then they ended up at junior college basketball. So the talent is really impressive. Like they're super impressive, I'm not saying that. But all of them have this idea that they're gonna go to like the NBA one day. And all of their life, they've sacrificed things for basketball. Basketball is their everything. And there's the stories in it are the whole entire point of why the show is so awesome. There's this one guy, Shamar, and in 6th grade, he could dunk a basketball, all right? Never in my life. 32 years old, all right? Never been able to dunk a basketball. So knowing that I would lose to a 6th grader is kind of like embarrassing. And they called him like Little LeBron, and he was on like all like Sports Center was like on him and stuff. And so he had this trajectory for his life that he was gonna be this incredible basketball player. But his life took this crazy turn. So what happened was he was so talented that in middle school, the coaches of AAU wanted to have him go play in California. And so the only way they could really make it happen is if his mom gave him up for adoption to the coach. Everybody's like, what, right? What? And so his mom actually signed the papers and gave him up for adoption to go play basketball. And so he's been homeless ever since middle school, couch surfing from one coach's couch to another. And so he never got his GED, and he's this Division I talent, like NBA talent kid he's never graduated from high school, and he's playing junior college basketball. Can you imagine that? And so what happens is, with every season, like the show or basketball, the season comes to an end, right? And they give you like a little update of like the stuff that happens in these kids' lives. But at the end of the season, sometimes, because everyone's like D1 or bust, sometimes the season ends and the players have run out of eligibility because they spent all their time either failing D1, D2, and then like wasting it at JUCO or not getting seen at JUCO. Or maybe they get injured, or maybe they're just not really good enough to go to a higher level. And so the thing that is their everything, basketball, is taken away from them. So what happens when the thing that you've made your life, made the most important thing in your life, what happens when it's taken away from you? And some of you guys may be in that same position as well. You have this sort of life reset, whether it's willingly or unwillingly. Maybe like your life was reset because of some sort of life circumstances, or you're like, you know what? I do need to drink more water. Today's a new day, January 1st. So you willingly choose a life reset. So we're entering this new series this year called The Reset. And the reason why is because sometimes, I don't know if you guys can relate with this, but this is 100% me. My life can feel like a cell phone that's at max capacity storage. You're at 100%. You guys know what I'm talking about? You go to take a video, and as soon as you start recording, it says you have like 3 seconds to record, then it's gonna be full. Or you go to record, it's just like, nope. Your phone's starting to run slow. You can't download any more apps. You're trying to erase the apps that you haven't used in a long time. Maybe go through pictures and be like, that one's not, I'm just gonna erase that one. So you get like that one more picture. Anybody? Yeah, there we go, thank you. Everyone's had this, right? And the thing is, the stuff on your phone isn't all bad. Some of it's really good. You got the Bible app on there, right? But what happens if you were to factory reset your phone? What would remain? Like the core bits that make the phone work. You'd have your operating system, you'd have the ability to text message, you'd have the ability to call, use the internet, take pictures, right? And that's pretty much it that's on your phone, unless you have some sort of like, I don't know, stuff that comes to your phone, like Facebook or something, right? You can erase that right away. But the stuff that remains is what makes up the phone and is like the essential. It's what's left for optimum function. And so over these next 5 weeks, we're gonna do that because sometimes that's what our lives is like. Our lives are like. They're like a phone filled to maximum capacity. And we're just overloaded. So at Sanctuary, we actually have 10 core values. We're only gonna go through 5 of them in the next 5 weeks. And these are the things that if we were to reset our lives, these would be the things that we feel at Sanctuary would remain and be left for essential function. And so I get the week 1. Also, as you guys come these next 5 weeks, there's gonna be a different teacher every week, and I got to pick them myself. Yeah, so you be prepared for some treats. It's gonna be awesome. So our first core value is Jesus is our everything. And what does it mean when someone's your everything? Because I had to look this up because I was like, this could go a million different ways, right? What the definition says, the dictionary says, is that this thing is the most important thing in your life. The most important thing that there is. So we're gonna talk about Jesus being our everything. The most important thing in my life. I want to tell you about it, but I want to use some stories. Can I tell you some stories? It's okay? I got 3 stories for you guys. First one straight from the Bible. We got Mark 10, 46 through 52. If you've been in the church for a long time, like I have, everybody calls this guy Blind Bart. He's got a cool name though, Bartimaeus. Oh, my name's Russ, by the way. Hello, I forgot to introduce myself. Okay, let's go. Let's read this. The they're referring to at the beginning of this, just for like context, is Jesus and his closest friends. All right. Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stopped and said, call him. So they called the blind man. Cheer up, on your feet, he's calling you. Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped up to his feet and came to Jesus. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked him. The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. Go, Jesus said. Your faith has healed you. Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. What's it like to see all of a sudden? That's what I want to know right away. I'm sorry for getting off track really quick, but what's it like to all of a sudden see? Does he look around at everybody? Is it like when you first wake up, you're like, ah, you gotta pry your eyes open, it's all blurry? Is that what it's like when you first see? Are you amazed by all the colors that you're seeing? You're like, what? I had no idea. People have said things were red and brown in the desert, right? I had no idea what red and brown were. They're so similar. I don't know. What would you say? Would you look at everybody else, what everyone else is wearing, and be like, look at yourself and be like, Mom, right? Because you're blind. He's just going by texture. Maybe it felt really nice, but maybe it's super ugly. You have no idea. That's why I'm like, what's it like to see after going through your whole entire life of not seeing? Anyways, so I like Instagram. I've talked about some stuff at this point. I got really into this in the last couple weeks because Bree not using social media whatsoever. There's this guy I love to follow. His name is Anthony Ferraro. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him. He's Instagram semi-famous, I guess. But he's blind. He had a degenerative eye thing go on when he was born, and so he's blind. But he was a really decorated high school wrestler. Can you imagine wrestling in a really intense, high level, blind? You have no idea what the person looks like until you start wrestling them. I don't know. It just seems like it'd be really difficult. Now he actually competes in Olympic judo, which is nuts. Yeah. He also skateboards and he makes cooking videos, which are my favorite. All right. You ever see a blind person cook? And he's got the best personality too. He always finishes every video. He's like, one love. It's hilarious. So he's he'll be cooking something. He keeps burning himself, but he's smiling and laughing throughout the whole thing. And then he eats at the end and goes, one love. He's the best. But seeing how hard it is for a guy in modern day who's blind to live, I can't imagine with technology, all the street crossings and stuff have textured bumps at the crosswalks and they beep. Even with that, I feel it'd be really difficult to cross the street. I can't imagine being blind now, but this guy, Bartimaeus, was blind in 30 AD. So imagine with me, if you will, 30 AD, the Middle East, you're in Jericho, it's deserty, and you're blind. So I imagine an average day would look like this. He wakes up, someone in his family or maybe a friend brings him over to the place where he's going to beg for the day. Sits him down. He's like, all right, Bart, I'll see you at the end of the day. And then Bartimaeus is stuck there all day. He's sitting there begging and just being alms for the poor. I don't know what you'd say, but he's begging for money. And then at the end of the day, his friend or his family has to come by and grab him and bring him back to his home. And the reason why, if you think about it, a blind guy with a bunch of money is probably a pretty easy target, right? Yeah, of course they'd have to have someone escort him back and forth. But Bartimaeus is just another beggar at this point. Also at this time, people were still using animals to carry all their goods and to go around from place to place. They got animals. You guys have been to the parade. You see what the horses do, right? These are dirt streets. And so the dust is getting all kicked up. He's sitting down eye level with the bottom of the horses. And I imagine he's probably breathing that nasty air all day, every day, just trying to shout anybody have $1 or a quarter? I don't know. He's shouting, trying to cough on this nasty air he's got to breathe in. It's dusty. It's nasty. This is pre-trash can era. People are ignoring him, so I imagine they're just probably tossing their trash as they go about their day, maybe hitting him with the trash. They're also ignoring just his existence in general, so maybe they're talking about private stuff right in front of him. And so he's just sitting there collecting the town gossip. And so all of a sudden, one day, Bartimaeus starts hearing about this guy, Jesus, who's in these other towns. People are traveling through Jericho, talking about this guy, Jesus. And you hear that Jesus healed a blind guy in Bethsaida. He's delivered a boy with an evil spirit. He healed a mute man. He raised a girl from the dead. He fed 4,000 and 5,000 people with just a little bit of food. And maybe he starts wondering, like, you know what? Maybe this Jesus, if he can do that for them, maybe he could do this for me too. So he starts dreaming. And then one day it happens. He's just out, completely average day. He left his house like every other day. His friends bringing him to wherever he's going to beg for the day. He's sitting there asking for money. People are like trying to go around him because they know he can't see him. Just going around him, trying to act like he doesn't exist. And then he hears like the crowd start to come, the front of the crowd. They're like looking backwards, like, yeah, Jesus is coming. We're leading the way. Woo. And out of all the streets in Jericho, out of all the days Jesus happens to be passing by Bartimaeus. His dream is coming to reality. He's like, I've been thinking about this, and I know exactly what I'm going to do. Maybe if Jesus could heal all these people, he could heal me too. So he jumps up and he starts yelling into the void because he doesn't know where Jesus is in the crowd, right? He can't see. So he's just like, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. And I'm sure it's loud and people are screaming and everyone's just really excited because like they're going to Passover. It's going to be an awesome time. And so it's just like, how do I stand out in the crowd when everyone's yelling for Jesus? And this is something about Bartimaeus that I think is worth pointing out. Bartimaeus is blind. He is not stupid. I think a lot of times with people with disabilities, you get treated different because you have a disability. For instance, my dad has had significant hearing loss in the past bunch of years, and so he has hearing aids. And people treat him like he's stupid, but he's not stupid. He just can't hear you, all right? That happens with people with all sorts of disabilities. Bartimaeus is really smart, and he puts something together that nobody has at this point in the book of Mark. What happens, there's a prophecy in Isaiah 35 that says the Messiah will heal the blind, the mute, and the lame. And maybe Bartimaeus has heard this. He's had to have heard it because he knows that the Messiah is going to come from the line of David. And so he says, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. This is the first time this is said in the book of Mark. And the people are just like so upset that this guy who smells and is blind and has nothing to offer Jesus is yelling for him. And so they tell him to be quiet. I think that's really interesting. It's the only quote they don't use. They quote everybody else, what everybody else is saying. I'm like, what kind of language were they using that they wouldn't write in the Bible, you know? Maybe it's pretty vulgar. I'm just imagining. So he tosses aside his cloak, I think because he's trying to get up so fast. He's getting up in a frenzy. He's going to find the cloak later. It doesn't matter now because this is one chance. He's not going to let some cloak that's got his legs tangled up stop him from seeing Jesus. And Jesus stops what he's doing, and he talks to him. And it's interesting because the very same people that were close to Jesus telling Bartimaeus to get away, Jesus was like, hey, tell him to come over. They're like, oh, we're just kidding. Come on. Come on, Jesus wants to see you. Cheer up, cheer up. How embarrassing, right? You're just like, get back, you smelly. And you're like, just kidding. I was getting to the point where Jesus wanted to see you. Jesus validates Bartimaeus. He says, you're worth stopping for what I'm doing. He says, you're worth stopping what I'm doing for. You're worth taking time out of his day for you, for Bartimaeus. So what did Jesus do for Bartimaeus? Because I feel like, first of all, it's obvious. If you were Bartimaeus, you'd be like, hey, I want to see too. But what did Jesus actually do? Jesus gave him sight. He's like, yeah, I want to see. That's obvious. But there's so much depth to what Jesus does. It's not just as simple as giving Bartimaeus sight. Jesus gave Bartimaeus a full life. What Jesus has for us and what Jesus had for Bartimaeus is way deeper and richer than we could ask for or imagine. So Jesus gives Bartimaeus the sight, but now Bartimaeus can get himself out of the dust and he can go explore. He can get out of the city. He can get out of Jericho. He can go walk through the countryside. He can go up to like some mountain and breathe some mountain air. He doesn't have to breathe that nasty dust anymore. He doesn't have to sit on the side of the road and beg anymore. He can see all the places that he's heard people talk about as they walk up and down the street. He also seems like a pretty smart guy. I'm going to botch the pronunciation of this, but it's like the Elah Valley. Bible people here. Elah Valley where David and Goliath fought. Elah Valley. See, that's why you keep experts around. because he obviously knows about David. So it's like, it'd probably be really interesting to him to finally go and walk. It's not that far. I looked it up. It's like 70 kilometers, which I'm not exactly sure how far that is. And it's only 70 kilometers from Jericho. He can go visit all sorts of stuff. He can live this huge life outside of the city because of what Jesus did. Something else he can do is that Bartimaeus can get a job. Bartimaeus' only job at this point was begging, and he needed help for it. I'm not saying Jesus wants us to be like independent and not rely on other people. But at this point in time, a little messed up hearing it now, but you wouldn't be allowed to get married if you didn't have a job. No one would give their daughter away in marriage. And I know that's the offensive part, getting given away. But you had to be worthy of a woman for a dad to give his daughter away. Who's going to give a daughter away to a guy who's just begging on the street? Probably nobody. So Bartimaeus has a chance to be able to have a family because of what Jesus did. And then the last thing he does is he follows Jesus through the street with his eyes, just by sight alone. Something that Bartimaeus never thought he would do when he leave home, because Jesus gave Bartimaeus a full life. The other thing Jesus did for Bartimaeus is Jesus did for Bartimaeus what Bart couldn't do for himself. Bart couldn't heal his own blindness. There's no like herbal tea mixture that he could drink and I can see. There's no like essential oil drops he's going to drip in his eyes and then be able to see. There's no doctor he can go to at this time that can heal his eyes and cure his eyes. Jesus has given Bartimaeus a life reset, a new life. How often would Bartimaeus go about his life telling his kids, telling his grandkids, telling his family about how Jesus changed his life, what Jesus did for him? Everything that Bart does from this point on, anytime he uses his eyes, is all only because of what Jesus did for him. So how important would you think that Jesus was to Bartimaeus? This is where I'd make the argument where for Bart, Jesus has become everything instantly. Because Jesus says, all right, go. Your faith has healed you. And Bart's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going where you're going. Jesus gave Bart a full life and did what he couldn't do for himself. If this was confusing, it's about to get weird. I wanted to explain the same point to you using a sheep. There's a sheep. Israel. This sheep's name is Barak. B-A-A-R-A-C-K. It's a pun, dad joke. And true story, all right? Barak was an Australian sheep. I guess he still is an Australian sheep. Once an Australian sheep, you probably always are. So he wandered off on his own. We don't know why Barak would wander off on his own. Maybe he was tired of being a grassland sheep, and he's like, I'm going to be a forest sheep. Or maybe he thought he didn't need a shepherd anymore. He's like, I'm tired of this guy. Or maybe he's not smart enough to know the difference of what living with a shepherd and not living with a shepherd would look like. So he's like, I don't need him. I'm going to go be on my own. Or maybe he's just not smart enough to know the difference. Or maybe he got accidentally lost. Who knows? What's important is a landscaper saw Barak wandering through the woods. And you know why there are no like wood-born sheep? You don't hear about like wild sheep roaming in the woods? Well, they're kind of stupid, first of all. Also, like, they're super easy to kill by anything. Like, all sorts of animals eat them. Read the Bible. You got, like, bears, lions, everything, wolves. Everything's eating sheep. They're easy. So that's why you don't see them in the forest. So anyways, animal rescue comes, and they find Barak. And you know what? Barak is in poor shape. It's a good thing they found him. I've deceived you. I'm sorry. This isn't Barak. This next picture is actually Barak. Whoa, right? Yeah, it's crazy. I just had to find a normal sheep because there's nothing for comparison. If you just see that, you're like, wow, that sheep can make a lot of wool. But if you see a normal sheep first, you're like, what? Right? That sheep's crazy. Crazy sheep. So Barak had all sorts of health issues because of how heavy his coat was. He was underweight. Like, surprise, he doesn't look underweight because it's all for show. There's nothing under there. And he had all sorts of health issues. He had an ear tag at one point that said which shepherd he belonged to. And this is why they're like, we don't know who he belonged to, because his wool got so thick, it actually popped the ear tag out. Yeah, it's crazy. He also couldn't see, as you might be able to tell. He couldn't see. That's why he was underweight, because he couldn't see the food. Also, I had a side shot of him at one point, and I'm like, this guy cannot roll over. If he rolls over, that's game. Like, he's got this like banana shape to him. And something else that happened is this little tiny grass seed got behind one of his eyelids, just on his eyelid, which wouldn't be a big deal. Sheep could just be like this, like paw it off, right, or hoof it off. And so that would be not an issue normally, but because his coat was so thick covering his eyes, an abscess formed where the little tiny grass seed was. Have you guys tried to like spread grass seed in like a yard? This stuff's small. But even that little thing became a huge issue because of how big his coat was. And so when the shepherd finally sheared him off, you guys could see that really nice picture of him looking all coat. He's got like a aftermarket jacket, I guess. Like it's not like the stock one. But so when they shaved him, his coat weighed 78 pounds, which is mind-blowing. But also it's like none of you know, I think, how much sheep wool weighs, right? So it's impressive. So I looked it up because I was like, that's really impressive, but how much does a sheep actually grow? A normal sheep grows between 2 and 30 pounds of wool a year. So this guy was gone for a long time, right? Who knows how long he was in the woods for? The thing about Barak is there was nothing he can do for himself when he was in the woods off by himself. There was nothing he can do for himself. Barak needed a shepherd. Because you know what? The shepherd has the tools. Barak only has hooves. He doesn't have hands. He can't shear himself. He doesn't have the technology. He doesn't know how to work a shearer. He couldn't survive without the shepherd. And then we saw in that last picture that the shepherd gave Barak a life reset, a chance to live out the rest of his life without the weight of the coat, always getting sheared every season, losing the weight, getting a chance to live without the unbearable weight of his coat. So the shepherd for Barak was his everything. The shepherd was Barak's everything. Without him, Barak's life would have been over any day of the week in the woods. Being that heavy, if he just rolled a little ankle, he's done. Or if that wool got a little bit heavier, and sheep aren't that strong. Sheep aren't known for being jacked, right? That wool was going to weigh him down eventually. He wasn't going to be able to move anymore. Any day of the week, his life could have been over, except for the shepherd. Just like Barak, we all carry a weight. All humanity does. And it's impossible for us to hold. It's impossible for us to remove the burden by ourselves. Barak's weight was wool, but our weight is the weight of sin. And sin is the substance that keeps us separated from God. Jesus is our shepherd. Jesus is Bartimaeus' shepherd. He has the tools to take away the sin and give us a reset, a chance to live our lives without the weight and the burden of sin. Gives us a full life. That's why Jesus is our everything. He does for us what we can't do, and he gives us a full life. Last story, I told you I got some stories for you. This last one, story number 3. I've told this story before, but I'm going to keep telling it because it's a story of God's goodness in my life. And I've never been blind, and I've also never been a sheep. But I have had problems in my life that I couldn't solve by myself. And maybe you have too. And I've been a Jesus follower my whole entire life. Jesus has been my everything forever. And still I have problems that I can't solve by myself. This one was huge. What happened was I got a job here, all right? I lived in Vermont with my family. I got 3 kids and a wife. And the time I got the job, I had 6 weeks to move. All right, I didn't own a house. I rented church housing. I worked at a church in Vermont. So it's not like I could sell that and have some sort of like money to buy something here. And Vermont was cheaper. And 6 weeks to find somewhere to live. When you got to move somewhere and make a big financial decision, you don't want to have time pressure. It's not good. And when I looked up when those 6 weeks started, I was like, man, we got to go full blast house hunting mode. Rent in the last year had gone up 51%. I'm sure all of you know this. You're like, yep, I know. 51%. That's insane. And so my wife and I, we prayed. We were like, Jesus, would you bring us somewhere to live? That it's like has like a good school, it's like big enough for all of us, and like close to work, close to the church. And it didn't seem like a huge ask, but as we were looking, it was like, man, we could afford some 2-bedroom apartments, which isn't ideal, but it's not bad. It was an option. And I had a conversation with my dad. He was praying for me, and he said, Russ, I think that God's going to bless you in your housing. And I was like, oh, that would be great. I would love that, right? I'd love to get blessed in the housing. But then all of a sudden, the pressure started building when I couldn't find anything. And I kept looking and looking, and I had my sister looking, I had my parents looking, I was getting people at the church like Kevin to look. I'm like, please help me. We had old contacts from living in Connecticut at one point before. We're like hitting everybody up. I'm like, I know you were in middle school last time we talked, but I think you're an adult now. Can you please help? It's a real story. I didn't do that though. I had my wife do it because I was scared. And so I felt so much pressure. I was like, I need to make this happen. And I was scared because I was like, if I don't make this happen, my dad's going to look bad. Because he told me that God was going to bless me in my housing. And as I was looking for housing and failing over and over and over again, and I was just like, God, how is this a part of your plan? Right? It's like, I'm giving this to you. We've given this to you. Would you please help us? And then I found this house in Stratford. And I don't want to give too many details because maybe one of you rented it, right? But this thing was pristine straight out of the 60s on purpose. And it sounded cool at first. It was way below market value because of that. It had the avocado shag carpet. It had all the original appliances. Like, it actually was kind of cool at first. And so I was like sight unseen. Also, it was funny. I eventually went and looked at it, and the guy was like, you see this? He's like rubbing the wall. He's like, it looks like wood, but it's wallpaper. And I was like, wow, that's great. So cool. And so you guys laughed and distracted me. Give me a sec. So I wanted to sign the lease for this place because it's big enough for all of us. It was out of budget, and I was like, whatever. We just need something, and we're like 2 weeks out from having to move. And this guy's being super slow. He's very old school, as you could probably tell. And so he sent me over all this stuff. He had 4 pages of stipulations for living there, and like all this stuff that I had to do. And then I was like, all right, let's sign this work so we have somewhere to move. And then he's like, I'm not signing this unless you come in person and sign it. I was like, oh, it's so annoying. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go down on a Thursday. We were moving in 9 days, had nowhere to live. I'm going to go see this place and sign it. And I get down there, start looking through this place, and I'm like coughing from how like terrible the air is from the shag carpets. It was horrible. And I was like feeling more and more defeated through each room that I walked through. And I was like, God, what is going on? This was my last hope. Because why would God choose to bless me? Have you guys ever thought that? I was like, why would God choose to bless me? I'm just me. I've done nothing. I'm just me. Like, I understand if God would want to bless someone who doesn't know him, because then it would draw him close. Or God would bless somebody who like did something cool. I haven't really done anything cool. I just like lived my life. So it's like, why would God choose to bless me? Walking through this house, left feeling terrible. I go back to my parents' house, trying to hold it together. I'm like, come on. So I call Bree. I'm like, hey, we cannot move into this place. She's like, oh no. I'm like, yeah. And so just start praying again, right on the phone with Bree. We're like, God, would you reveal to us the house that you have for us? Would you just give us this house? Whatever it is, would it be big enough for all of us? Would it be close to the church? We know you have something for us. And so we prayed and we trusted. And then the next morning, my sister came over to help go through all the different websites with me. She found this place. It was just being built in Fairfield. And it just started accepting applications. It's this type of like luxury building, this luxury apartment building, where they don't even need to post pictures of what it looks like on the inside, because they're like, we just know people are gonna rent this, right? I was like, all right, my sister, her name is Beth, she's like, they're accepting applications for an affordable housing unit. I'm like, let's go, right? So I put in my application, Bree put in her application. I was like, hey, like, we're getting this. I think this is what God had for us. And we're like, is this really happening? And they're like, we'll let you know by Wednesday if you get it. And we were moving Saturday. So I was like, oh no, right? We're gonna have like 3 days. So then I go back to Vermont. We have all of our going away parties, all of our friends. They're like, hey, where are you guys moving? I'm like, I don't know, right? And the thing was, we had peace about it. I was going to sleep every night like I always do. My head hits the pillow, Bree tries to talk to me, and then I wake up in the morning, right? It was incredible. I had a peace about this that didn't make any sense. We're only a few days from moving, still packing up everything. And then Wednesday comes, and Bree's just like standing there. We're in the middle of packing boxes and all this stuff. And she gets an email. She's like, I just got this scam email. And then she was like reading it. She's like, it's from the apartment building. I'm pretty sure it's a scam. And she's like, do you think it's a scam? I look at it, I'm like, yeah, it's probably a scam. And then I got the same email, and then we cried, right? Because we got this apartment. It's ridiculous. Yeah, you class guy, I guess it's cool, yeah. But Jesus provided something better than I could have ever imagined. And he did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And it was better and richer than I ever imagined. And one of the things that I struggled with through this whole entire thing is, why would God choose to bless me when I have options? I don't know if you thought of that. Because I had this place in Stratford, and there were some 2-bedroom apartments where I'm like, I have options. People would probably love to live in these places. So why would God choose to bless me when I have options? But it's little big moments like this that Jesus becomes more of your everything. I can really trust him with everything. He will come through for me when I can't do it myself. And he will come through for me when I can do it myself. His miracles aren't just reserved for people who don't know him yet. If Jesus would bless Bartimaeus, who just met him right then and there, wouldn't he bless you? Wouldn't he bless me? And if Jesus would bless me with this like ridiculous apartment, something small that was this really big thing in my life, wouldn't he bless you too? When Jesus becomes your everything, he doesn't just say, you know what, job's done, saved a soul, see ya, and move on. He continues to show up over and over again and bless you because he loves you. No matter if you see yourself as not being worthy, no matter if you see yourself as having nothing to contribute to Jesus, Jesus sees you and will stop what he's doing, take time out of his day just for you. Here at Sanctuary, we believe that Jesus is our everything. He's our everything because he gave us everything. Jesus gives us a full life, and he does for us what we cannot do ourselves. If you were to reset your life back to factory settings like you were to reset a phone, and the first app or the first program or whatever to be uploaded into your life was, Jesus is my everything. Jesus is your everything. Every thought process, every action, everything you said had to run through this Jesus is my everything app. Would your life look different? Would your life look different? Mine would. I was trying to think of how my life would look different. Would your life look the same? I think I'd be a lot more empathetic. Would you be more empathetic? Would you value people higher? Would people matter more to you? Those are the two things. I'm like, man, people would matter so much more to me. And I'd be way more empathetic and patient if everything I did went through this process of Jesus is my everything. If Jesus isn't already your everything, if you're sitting there, you're like, Jesus isn't my everything is JUCO basketball. It doesn't take long. It took one conversation between Bartimaeus and Jesus for Jesus to become Bartimaeus' everything. It was just a normal day. He woke up a blind person, went about his normal day, and then all of a sudden he could see when he encountered Jesus. This is your opportunity too. Jesus is walking down your Jericho street. You can come up and pray with our prayer team after the service ends. We're going to have some people over here on this side of the stage. They would love to pray for you because Jesus, the great shepherd, has the tools to heal you. Jesus, the great shepherd, has the tools to rid you of the weight that you carry. He wants to heal you, and he wants to be your everything. I'm going to pray for us really quick. And then we're going to, for those who want to receive prayer, come up and receive prayer. Jesus, thank you for being our everything. Thank you for doing what we couldn't do ourselves. Thank you for having the tools to rid us of this weight. Thank you for stopping and seeing us throughout what would be a normal day and giving us a full life. Thank you for loving us and not stopping loving us just because we choose to love you too. Thank you for loving us more, for pouring out more, for choosing to bless us. And we pray for those who are here who don't know you yet. Would they have courage? Would they ask questions and come up and receive prayer and when they get the opportunity to? We pray for a blessed week. In your name, Jesus, amen.